Welcome to Running Out of Space. I'm Adam Grabarnik, and admittedly not a baseball fan. But my guest today is. His name is Jake Reiner, and he's an actor, producer, reporter, podcaster, the son of one legend, and the grandson of another. In this episode, we get into his baseball memorabilia and the memories imbued within. Though not concerned with market value or resale prices, Jake is a collector in the purest form. Check it out. Baseball memorabilia, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I think every baseball fan has their own little collection of something. It's just typical for people that love the game. They will collect either balls or bobbleheads or jerseys or cards, and I tend to have all four of those collections.
And when did that start?
I mean, when I was super young. I mean, now that I'm older, I don't do as much collecting as I used to. But when I was about, I don't know, 10 or 11 or so, my dad started taking me on these baseball trips. Every summer, we would go to 3 or 4 parks. And eventually we got to all of the stadiums. Now, a bunch of those stadiums have to, we have to go back to a bunch of those stadiums because they got new parks. But when I would go to each stadium, I would get something from the souvenir shop there to remember the stadium by. And I chose to go with jerseys because I love jerseys. And so I got whatever my quote unquote favorite player was on that team. So for example, when we went to Toronto, I got a Roy Halladay jersey, or when I went to Philadelphia, when he was playing for the Phillies, I got a Mike Lieberthal jersey because I just liked the name, and he wasn't that great of a catcher, but just everywhere I went, Chipper Jones in Atlanta, or Ken Griffey Jr. when he played for the Reds. And so I just kind of built my jersey collection from there. But the baseball collection actually started because my dad used to have season tickets to the Dodgers games, and we would sit, kind of close to the visiting on deck circle. And because of that, when I was like a cute little kid, I would run up to the railing and they would toss me the baseballs, whether it be the ball boy or one of the players. And then as I got older, I got less cute and less, desirable to be thrown a ball. And so if I ever did get one, I would then give it to whatever kid was around me at the time.
Would the players autograph the ball before handing it to you? Or would it just be like, hey, there's a kid, here you go, let's make that kid's day sort of thing?
Well, I mean, during the games, no, but when we would go on these trips and we'd get to, go on the field or go in the clubhouse or meet some of the players, I would definitely get autographs then.
Cool.
It's funny you bring up autographs because I feel like baseball autographs are sort of the last autograph that people are getting these days.
Mhm.
It feels like people are more interested in getting a selfie than they are getting an autograph. And it's sort of like the digital autograph nowadays. But I feel like kids or even, grown adults still want that autograph on the baseball, which I think is cool.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I would also say sports in general, because I know, like, for me, my reference is comic books, and there's been a weird switch within the last, I don't know, maybe 10 years, where collectors don't want an autograph unless it was verified by the comics grading company. So if you have like, for me, when I was a little child, I wanted to get the comics autographed, but there was no CGC, there was no real internet when I was a child. So having autographed comics now is actually a detriment. It's actually lowers the value, even though
Really?
it's not forged. So, but I could see the same thing in baseball. Probably a little less. Although I don't know, there's probably a big forgery market in baseball stuff.
Yeah, and I think and I don't know, I don't understand the whole baseball card market. It's funny. Before you asked me to do this, I actually had pulled out my baseball card collection
Mhm.
just to see if there was anything of value, and I realized that I was smart enough as a young kid to I'll show it to you,
Cool.
to make a binder of kind of like it's a tiny little
Uh-huh.
thin binder.
Is this your A
The
team you're
other
about to show me right now?
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of like the most important cards that I found. So
Cool.
like I have, where is it? So
Uh-huh.
like right here, I mean, there's an Ichiro Suzuki rookie card. There's an Omar Garcia Parra rookie card. Um, Albert Pujols here. But like as cool as these cards are, and then like, the list kind of goes on. It's a whole
Uh-huh.
binder of these kind of, whether they're limited edition, they're kind of like shiny like this, or they're
Uh-huh.
actually, that signifies the Topps rookie card trophy here for
Uh-huh.
Prince Fielder, for example. Like, I don't really know what the value of that is. Like, I'm trying to still learn that because as a kid, you don't really think about it, right? You're just collecting it. It's fun. You may get a couple of the same player. Maybe you can trade with one of your buddies. But you're not really thinking about monetizing any of it. And
Well, if you are,
now
it's the
that,
wrong, if you are, it's kind of the wrong mindset. But yes,
right,
absolutely.
exactly. So I have so many cards, and if I could find the right person to talk to about how to go about making sure I get the best value on any of these cards, that would be great. But the point you made about, authenticity, well, it's not just about authenticity, it's also about what condition the cards are in.
Yeah.
And have they been damaged by any elements or whatever? Are they, I mean, kind of was smart enough to keep it in a binder in these sort of like laminated slips,
Mhm.
which I assume would be a good way to keep it, but who knows?
Who knows? Yeah. And it's so true, especially like just collector markets these days. It seems like if it's not mint, 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 you're going to take a big hit on a resale value. I mean, when it is
Right.
time to sell, a lot of these things, like, for me, like there's stuff I have and it just holds real sentimental value. So while like, I could like sell it on eBay or something for, a pretty penny. It's hard for a collector, even though, it seems like the whole thing is to pride yourself on what you have, but it's hard to let go of that too. So when you're ready, it's even more of like a heartbreaker if somebody's like, oh, well, it's not 100% mint condition, so I'm only gonna, it's only worth XYZ when it's worth so much more to you and your own kind of soul.
I think whether or not people still collect baseball cards or collect bobbleheads, those are, easy collections to have. But I feel like people that have baseball collections, like physical baseballs, is just a little more. It's a little more exciting, I feel, to get a baseball at a game because if you look at all of the major sports across the country, whether it's football or basketball or hockey, golf, tennis, you name it, if the ball goes into the stands, you don't get to keep it. You have to give it back. You have to,
Oh,
find an official to give it back to. But in baseball, there's so many baseballs that they put in play. And I don't know the average per game off the top of my head, but it's hundreds of baseballs that they use. And you'll even see pitchers on the mound. They'll get a new baseball. They'll look at it. They'll feel it in their hand. They're like, nah, screw this. And they'll throw it away.
yeah.
And that ball may be tossed into the stands or it may be collected as, to use for batting practice the next day. But I think that's why collecting baseballs is so much fun because there's nothing else like it in sports. You get to keep the ball that they were playing with, whether, it's Albert Pujols fielding a ground ball and he tosses it into the stands at the end of the inning. You get to say, I have a ball that Albert Pujols just touched in the game and I get to keep it. So I feel like that, a baseball collection, I feel like it's cool because it's rare, right? Like you're not going to a game expecting to get a baseball, whether that's a foul ball hits you, which is even more rare than getting it thrown to you. But even getting it thrown to you is rare. And I just feel like the rarity of it is what makes it special.
Yeah, it's almost like it's like a crystallized moment in time. Like with a
Yeah,
card,
exactly.
there's like, 10,000 produced, 100,000 produced. That ball is like right then and there. You can't replicate that moment.
Right.
And that, I
And you
mean,
can see over my left shoulder all the baseballs that I have on the shelf there.
so those are all
Like,
fly balls, or are
I
those?
mean, most of them are baseballs that I got at a game. A lot of them actually are autographed as well, so it's kind of a mixture.
Now, were the autographs something you sought after maybe in the future, or do they have a situation in games? They're probably used to this, like people bring to the usher or something, and they can get them autographed.
Well, it kind of, I mean, you can't really get an autograph during the game. That's pretty difficult.
Sure.
I'm sure it's happened, but it's pretty rare that that occurs. So fans will show up. The best way to get an autograph is to show up during batting practice when the players are kind of more laid back. Maybe it was, yesterday's starting pitcher who's out in the outfield shagging fly balls. He's not thinking about pitching for another 4 or 5 days. So he's maybe more inclined to come to the sideline and sign autographs. That's typically when you'll get guys to sign stuff. Or, if you're lucky enough to go into the clubhouse before the game or meet some of the players, you can get an autograph that way. But yeah, it's almost impossible to get one during the game.
Sure. I wasn't implying that, but absolutely. It actually would be pretty cool if they did have like a moment where they would pause and they could go into the stands,
Yeah.
and some stuff. Now, are you the type that like isn't really shy about asking for an autograph?
When I was asking for autographs,
Yeah.
no, I wasn't that shy. I mean, it's sort of like asking your crush out to the dance, right? You gotta get yourself psyched, right? Because
Yeah.
there's the possibility that you could get rejected. So you gotta kind of get yourself in the right mindset to go and approach one of your favorite players. And then there's also the added thing in the back of your mind, the old saying of, don't meet your heroes because you'll probably be disappointed. So there's that added to it as well. So I did have to work up some courage to go ask players for autographs, but I'm also a television reporter. I do news and sports. And since I've been in that business, I've sort of shied away from asking for autographs because it is really frowned upon if you are working a game and you ask a player for an autograph or a picture. It kind of cheapens it. And it's not like illegal, but it is, an unwritten rule that you just don't do that. And so I kind of, once I got to kind of interview these guys and get to know them on some level when I'm covering a game or whatever, it's sort of that itch to ask for an autograph kind of goes away.
Yeah, I could see that. So let's circle back to when you were going on this stadium tour and you were getting the jerseys. Like, were they, did they have certain patches that were exclusive only to the stadium? Were they like licensed from the MLB, or were they anything specific to that stadium, a specific piece of merch, or were they just really high quality jerseys that were on sale there?
Sometimes I was able, like there were two instances where I got shirt jerseys or jerseys when I couldn't find the authentic jersey with their name on the back. And the two instances that I can think of off the top of my head was, I mentioned Chipper Jones in Atlanta and then Jim Edmonds in St. Louis. But you go to any team store at any of these ballparks, you can find authentic MLB licensed jerseys. And that's typically what I went for.
Cool.
And so like I said before, like whatever favorite player I had, it was either whatever my favorite player was, or if it was a former Dodger, because I'm a huge Dodgers fan, if it was a former Dodger that now plays for whatever team it was, I would try to get their jersey. So for example, when we went to Arizona, my favorite player of all time is Sean Green, who played for the Dodgers, but he also played for the Diamondbacks. And so when we were in Arizona, I made it a point to go get a Sean Green Diamondbacks jersey. And so I have a couple of those as well.
You wear them these days?
I have worn them when I've gone back to stadiums. Like, for example, like I worked in Houston from 2016 to 2018. And this is before I found out that the Astros cheated their way through the 2017 World Series title. And I was, quote unquote, I wasn't a fan of the Astros, but I supported the Astros because I worked there. And I had a Craig Biggio jersey, like a really like cool throwback type of Craig Biggio jersey. And so whenever I would go to the Astros games when they weren't playing the Dodgers, I would wear that Craig Biggio jersey to the game. But I don't think I would ever just kind of sport it, like wearing it around. I felt like there needed to be a special occasion, like going to a game or dressing up for like a costume party or something like that. But like, I tried to keep them in as mint condition as possible.
Why do you think that baseball has such a passionate collector community surrounding it, whereas football, basketball, hockey, there is a bit of a collector's culture around it, but with baseball it's just a whole other stratosphere of passionate fans, of collectors seeking out just a wide array of merchandise. Forget cards, game worn jerseys, game worn hats, even like the pennants, or like people buy like seats from the Mets. Like Mets people buy like the seats from the stands. Why do you?
Yeah.
That is so. That is so. That fire is so strong with baseball fans. Why what's the tie with baseball and collecting that has endured over time?
It has a lot to do with baseball fans being just inherently nostalgic. And I think, it's considered America's pastime. Now, is it America's most popular sport? No, that's definitely football. But baseball is sort of the classic sport that, from generation to generation, you pass the love of it down to whoever your son or daughter is, right? And I think that when you're collecting cards, let's say I'm not talking about Pokemon cards because those are very well collected. People collect the crap out of those. But when you're talking about sports cards, what's the first thought that comes to your mind? Is a baseball card every single time. And I'm a fan of basketball. I'm a fan of football. I'm not a collector of either of those sports, but I know that there are cards out there. Like, sure. I know, but for some reason, baseball cards, it was kind of like the pioneer of sports cards. Like it's the card that you put in the spokes of your bike, right? You close pin it to your bike and it flutters as you pedal, right? Like that is sort of the genesis of where cards started is with baseball. And so I think because of that, you have this nostalgia, you have this America's pastime, you have fathers and mothers passing it down to their sons and daughters. It's a very collectible type of sport. And like I mentioned with baseballs, it's the only, professional ball that you can take home with you that was thrown around or hit in the game.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really fantastic because it mirrors comic book collecting so much in the sense of heroes. I mean, the yes. whole thing with the cards is owning a picture of your hero, owning something specific to your hero. And there's so many different variations you can express that in with jerseys, with autographed balls.
Yeah. I'll tell you one, just real quick, because you made me think of it.
Great.
I have this card that I keep in my wallet. Hold on. Let me see if I can get it out. Okay. This is what you call the opposite of mint condition, but I keep it in my wallet, and it's a Sean Green card, and he's playing first base, which is bizarre. And I just felt that I wanted to capture this memory for some reason, because he started in right field and that was his natural position, but the Dodgers, I forget who they acquired, but they moved him to first base. And he was actually a pretty decent first baseman. And I believe this was his final year with the Dodgers. And so I kind of, like you say, you have a picture of your hero, you kind of immortalize them with these cards. and I keep it with me, 24/7 or whenever I have my wallet on me.
And what, like, if we can get a little deeper on that, what, like, aside from the fact that it is kind of an end of one chapter of that player's life and the beginning of another, why is that? Why do you need that in your wallet every day? This is like the stuff I love to talk about.
Why do I need it in my wallet every day? I guess I don't really need it, but it's just nice knowing it's there. It reminds me of why I fell in love with baseball. It reminds me of why Shawn Green was my favorite player. And there's a few reasons why. One of them is he is a Jewish ball player. I'm Jewish myself. So I kind of had that connection with him. He came over to the Dodgers in the year 2000 is when he came over. So he was only there from 2004 to 2000 to 2004. He was traded to the Diamondbacks in 2005, which was and it was honestly one of the worst trades the Dodgers have ever made because the return that they got was just garbage. And I was so upset that they traded away my favorite player. And some of his best years were with the Dodgers. And it just reminds me of that time in my life where I really started to become a baseball fan. And I have a special connection with him because in the third grade, he was my favorite player. And this was in either 01 or 02 when I was in the third grade. And I knew that for my birthday, my parents were going to take me and a bunch of my friends to Dodger Stadium to go watch the game, but also they arranged for us to go to the clubhouse and meet the players. And I figured that we were going to meet Shawn Green. And me and my friend, Jacob Moss, who's still one of my best friends to this day, he was also a huge Shawn Green fan. And so we decided that in art class, we were going to make something for Shawn Green. And we created the worst looking sculpture you've ever seen in your entire life. It was a lump. It was literally a lump of clay that we put together. And we thought, yeah, we're going to give it to him. So we wrapped it up in this terrible paper. It was awful. The worst presentation. So we get to the stadium and we meet Shawn Green. We present him the lump. He opens it up and looks at it. And there's this moment that you can see on his face, because we have a picture of it, is this sort of like, what is this? He's like, he didn't know what it was, but he knew that these two kids who loved him, were giving him something. And he told us that day that he would keep this lump in his locker if he hit a home run that day. Well, the baseball is just full of magic, right? So that day he not only hit a home run, he hit 2 home runs. And so years later, when he was traded to the Diamondbacks, my dad and I, we went to Arizona and we saw him, and he recognized my dad in the stands. And he said hello, and we were like, Shawn, we have to ask you, did you keep that thing that we gave you? And he said, yes. And he kept it in his locker. And then last year I actually, cause I write for this fan website. Well, it was originally called Dodgers Lowdown. Now it's called Dodgers Tailgate. And I interviewed Shawn Green, and he told me that he kept that thing in his locker for a couple of seasons.
Wow.
And during those seasons that he kept it, he broke the Dodgers single season record for most home runs in a season by hitting 49 home runs in 2001. Then in 2002, he became, I think it was like the 14th or 15th player ever to hit 4 home runs in a game. And just all these crazy things that happened. And that's the other thing that I think kind of ties in with the baseball collection, is that baseball players and baseball fans are very superstitious. Yeah. And so, of course, he kept that in his locker because it was something that he had on a day that he had a really good day at the plate. And he just kept it in there because he knew that for whatever reason, this thing had some sort of meaning that he needed to have with him. And it's the same thing for fans too. When you're watching a game and, maybe you're sitting with your buddy and both of you have your arms crossed. And then, the team starts to come back, and maybe your friend moves out of that position, and you sort of say to them, what are you doing? You can't get up, like get back in that position. That's kind of the magic and the, the where the love of the game comes from is not only accepting that that's a part of it, but like really buying into the superstitious part of baseball. And I think I believe it does tie in to sort of the sentimentality of baseball collectors.
Yeah, and it's funny you talk about superstition. It's almost like all the times I've seen people who collect baseball stuff, it's their collection is kind of like has kind of a shrine quality to it.
Yep.
And I guess that goes hand in hand with all of the what I was talking about earlier, the array of items that you can collect as a baseball fan, as a fan of a certain player. Did you find yourself less enthusiastic once the card once he switched teams? Once your favorite players switched teams, are you less enthusiastic about collecting the cards, or you'll continue along with your player?
Well, here's the thing. See, and that's where, like, today's fan would probably not be still rooting for their favorite player after they've left their team. It's just kind of, they're not with your guys anymore, and you're kind of like, whatever, I'll find a new favorite player on my team.
Mm-hmm.
But my dad was always a huge Willie Mays fan, and he grew up a New York Giants fan, and then he switched to becoming a Dodgers fan because the Giants traded Mays away to the New York Mets. But it never changed his allegiance and his fandom of Willie Mays.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that kind of stuck with me, where it was like, even though Shawn Green is not on this team anymore, like, he's still my favorite player. I still root for him, even though he plays for a division rival. And then he later played for the Mets, and he hurt us in the playoffs in 2006. So I wasn't too happy about that, but no, I always rooted for him no matter what. Yeah. And I think that any true fan that is truly a fan of any one player, not just their own team, will tell you the same thing.
Yeah. Is that where you keep right behind you? Is that where you keep all your collection, or is it just the balls back there?
Yeah, it's kind of, I mean, I kind of have a collection of my collection is kind of in a couple of different places. So mm-hmm. like, that's all of the balls that all the bobbleheads too that I collected when I was younger, and I have my baseball cards here. But then I have this is my childhood room. Okay. But I have a place in Marina Del Rey where I brought some of my favorite bobbleheads and bats and things, and baseball tchotchkes to there, because as any collector probably feels, is that they always want to be surrounded by these things. They always want the items that they hold dear to be around them, and to be able to look at them and not so much like stare at them every day, or play with the bat or play with the ball or whatever, but just like having that comfort of knowing that like your stuff is still around, and you just kind of feel more at home.
The dragon and its gold.
Right.
What is that? This is a good segue into that. What is your like holy grail or your prized possession? Do you have a grail that you're seeking, and also what's the one piece de resistance of your collection?
If I go to a new stadium, or if I haven't been to a stadium in a while, I will still buy a jersey, because it's just something that I started and I keep doing it. Yeah. And I still do collect bobbleheads when I can. Mm-hmm. But I think my favorite thing that I have, and I don't know where it is at the moment, but I know it's around here somewhere, is going back to Shawn Green. I have one of his batting gloves, and the cool thing about that is that he started this tradition that no other player had done before him or since him. And it was kind of by accident. So Shawn Green started out as a player for the Toronto Blue Jays. And then we traded for him at, like I said, at the beginning of 2000. And then when he got to the team, he told this story. This is when I interviewed him. He told this story of when he got to the plate one day. It was at home, and he noticed that there was a rip in his batting gloves. And he was like, oh man, like these batting gloves stink. I got to go get a new pair. But he was on deck, so there was no time to do that. So he just went up to the plate and he hit a home run. And then as he was circling the bases, he decided that he didn't need the batting gloves anymore. So he threw them to the stands. And Vin Scully, the legendary Dodgers broadcaster, said on the air, oh, wow, that seems like that's a tradition that the new guy does or whatever. And somebody told him about what Vin Scully had said. And Sean Green thought about it and said, well, that's actually not something that I ever had done before. But now that Vin Scully said it, I think I have to keep doing it. So he continued to do it. Every time he hit a home run, he would toss his gloves to the stands. And it started in LA, which is, I think, the coolest part for me. And he said that it kind of petered out after he left the Dodgers. But when I went to go see him for that game, when he played for the Diamondbacks in Arizona, he hit 2 home runs that day. And the first time he rounded the bases, he tried to throw one of the gloves to me, and some little kid or whatever. And I was a little kid at the time too. So like, it's not like that, but some little snot-nosed kid jumped in front of me and caught it. So it was a miracle that he actually hit another home run. And that time he actually made sure to throw me the glove. And so I have that glove. I don't know where it is, but it's a white Rawlings batting glove. And it is by far my favorite, the most favorite thing that I have.
It's so great sitting and listening to your story in a few different ways. For somebody that has no idea about baseball other than just casually watching here and there, I'm kind of I feel like I am an outsider of that. But looking at you explaining your experience of that day and all the little nuances that you picked up on, and the excitement and the passion that you have for that exact experience, that exact moment, that the physical remains of that moment is it really shows like you're the true collector inside of you. Like you remember down to the I'm sure you could describe what the kid's t-shirt, what the kid was wearing. You were just transported right back into that time when you got that. And that is so special when it comes to collectors. That aspect that's not spoken a lot about is that experience that they had acquiring that, the memory that goes along with that.
Exactly.
And you can't get that with baseball cards because they're so mass produced. And while baseball cards are awesome, it seems like you're really into the moment in which you acquired the piece, the moment.
Oh, definitely.
The physical evidence.
And I'll tell you something. A bunch of the balls that I have behind me that I got at the game, I had my dad write on the ball who threw it to me and the date, so that I would remember that moment of who threw it to me, even if it was the bat boy. But there's a few balls up there where I can look back and read what it says and be like, oh yeah, I remember that. That was Eric Karros. He was at the plate and he fouled one off, and one of the visiting players flipped it to me. But you're right. That's part of what I think is unique about baseball collectors or baseball fans who are collectors, is that it's that the story that goes along with it, because anybody can open a pack of Topps baseball cards and like, oh, cool, I got a rookie card for Bryce Harper, or ooh, I got a Manny Machado limited edition, whatever, which is cool, but it's like there's no memory attached to that. It's just an object. It's just, okay, cool, I'm glad I got that now. But the stories that go along with it are what I, like you said, is what what means the most to me.
Yeah, and it's so pure. It's like. And I don't want to taint the conversation because it's so fantastic to hear these sorts of stories. But like, if you were somebody who, you wanted to sell, you want to buy a house, or, you want to put a kid through school or something, it's time to sell maybe. no one would want to buy something that's, well, maybe autographed by your dad. But what I'm saying is, no one would want a baseball. It was just a fly ball, but like
Right.
it's so ingrained into your identity and who you are that it's almost it's priceless. I mean, I
Right.
hate to say that. It's you can't put a dollar amount on that, especially for somebody else. Like somebody else taking that ball, they won't have that. They won't be transported the way that you're transported when you see it.
Right.
So
Right.
that's I love when when collectors are really pure about it, where it's like you could tell that it's never been about the resell,
No,
and it's so
never.
much. That's what it's so much is
If it
about.
was about that, I would have sold these things a long time ago.
Yeah, right, exactly. And it's like that's such a focus right now because there's eBay, because there's grading, because there's what a whole collectibles market on YouTube and stuff, and it's just you dilute and you lose that spark that gets people to want to obsessively have these things and experience these things.
Right.
It's really beautiful. And yes, circling back, it is very indicative to baseball.
Yes, it is. And you're right. I don't think anybody would really care about a ball that a bat boy flipped to me, unless I become some sort of mega celebrity, and in which case, me handing a little kid a ball would mean something to them because they got it from me, not necessarily related to how I got it.
Right. So let's go through the bobbleheads now. So were the bobbleheads stadium exclusives, or were they merch table?
They were most of the bobbleheads that I got. I never went out. Well, that's not true. There was one that I got from like a store, but like pretty much all the bobbleheads that I have are from games that I went to,
Yeah.
whether it was on my baseball trip or whether I was going to Dodger Stadium. And obviously most of my bobbleheads are Dodgers,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I mean, I have a bunch of duplicates too. So that may be an incentive to maybe sell some of those, but yeah, bobbleheads are still in, and they've stood the test of time.
They're retro.
I
They're
don't know
like it's like
exactly.
the design has never gotten better. Maybe the sculpts are better, but the whole novelty of it you can't really beat.
Exactly. They've definitely gotten better at making it look more like the player. There's a couple that I have that are just really awful. They're kind of comical because they look nothing like they may have gotten the skin tone right, but that's it.
Yeah.
And maybe the jersey number, but that's it. So for those, yeah, most of the ones that I collected, pretty much all of them are from actual games.
What was the hardest baseball card to acquire back in your day when you were getting cards? Would you be the kid that got the box and then just cracked open the box, and then go back for single packs?
Yeah, I got like I would go to like a sporting goods store or any of the local ones around me and just buy like heaps of packs and just kind of hang out with my friends and kind of open them and see what we got. And most of those cards come from that.
Would you have a
But
card
then
shop in
also there
town?
was some. Yes, although I believe it's not there anymore.
What was it?
It was called Star Toys, and they had a nice little section of baseball cards there, and then there was Kramer Sporting Goods, which had baseball cards as well that I would get from there. But then there's actually some cards in there that have absolutely no value because they're just really poorly made, but they would have, like, much like the bobblehead giveaways at the Dodger games, they would have card giveaways.
Yeah.
And it was cool because they would give you these like massive, like these sheets of cards that you would, fold and rip.
Oh, there were uncut sheets. Those are cool and with perforations. Oh, those are
Yeah.
really cool. Did you keep the
Yeah.
sheets or did you rip them open?
I ripped them open and I have them. I'll show you. And like, they're just fat, but like, I'll show you. Hold on. I'll show you what the crappy looking cards looked like. Let's see. Although this one looks like it came in a pack, but like really just, but it's cool. It's like, like they got the Keebler elf on there.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
there's some facts and figures about Pedro Borbon, who was a terrible reliever for us. But let's see.
How far back
Here
do you
we
go?
go.
What's your oldest card?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Probably the 80s, 70s, 80s. But like you can see here, this is from that sheet.
Uh-huh.
And you can see, I don't know if you can see on the sides, it looks like they're a little ripped.
No, I can't see from here, but I'll take your word for it.
Yeah. Let me just. So this is, you can see how it's a little ripped there.
Oh, you ripped it. You ripped it open.
I know. Well, it would come in a sheet.
Yeah.
It. That was cool. God, there's so many terrible players I have here. Jesus. But anyway,
I remember I was I never was a huge baseball fan. I grew up in Miami, and we didn't get the Marlins until I don't know. It was too. I couldn't. I was too old for it to really make an imprint. We would go to games and stuff, but basketball was a big deal. But I still
the
remember,
Marlins were in the mid '90s.
Yes. So I didn't grow up being a baseball fan. Football and basketball were big in Miami when I was growing up, but I remember that I went to summer camp one year and there were kids who broke me off to 87 tops that specific year. And I loved the cards. Like I didn't really, I've been a collector my whole life. I've just always loved kind of amassing these little things that I get obsessed about. And Tops 87 was something I was just obsessed about. I loved it. So it was, Bo Jackson, like Wally Joyner, but like the card, what I loved most was actually how the card was printed. It had like a wooden panel and it just like the card looked good. The back stats looked great. And like, I just collected those because I liked the cards. And that's kind of something that has always kind of stuck with me that I bring up with baseball collectors. And I haven't really met other people that did that. With anything else, I've met a few people that actually love Tops 87, but not in any other sense were they collecting cards just to collect them. There seemed to be something about that specific year that resonated with my generation, I guess. And I kind of dabbled a little bit with like when Upper Deck started, but then since I wasn't a fan, I couldn't connect in a deeper way other than, oh, these are cool cards that, it's a cool edition, like the way the layouts, these look really nice and they have a little hologram on the back. Beyond that, I couldn't get into the culture very much. And that's probably why it fizzled out.
Right. I mean, you really have to, whatever you're collecting, I feel is you really have to be into that subject. I feel like and that's why those cards didn't mean anything to you. Like, there are some cool cards that I have. I can't pull them out because I don't know exactly where they are, but I mean, I've got a couple of cards that have like a little like jersey cloth in it, or like or like a little chip from the bat in the card. And so in order for that to resonate with anybody, you got to be a fan of the game, know who the player is, and then it becomes special to you.
Yeah, and that's so specific. Again, these baseball collectors. You baseball collectors are so specific. It's so wonderful because, like with comics, you can walk into a shop. It's like, oh, that looks cool. I'm going to read that, and that's the barrier of entry. That's cool. Right. I'll read that story. With baseball and baseball collecting, it's a life. It's lifestyle above all.
Yeah, and I also feel like I know that there are. You said you're a collector yourself, and I'm sure that there are a lot of folks out there that seek these things, like go out to specifically collect things. And my style, or the way I kind of, do it, I guess, is that I don't actively do it. And that it just sort of comes to me. So when I get a new bobblehead, it's just like, oh, I'm grateful to be going to that game where they happen to have the bobblehead. But I'm not looking at the schedule being like, okay, there's a Justin Turner bobblehead night and then a Trevor Bauer bobblehead night. I got to make sure I have tickets for those games so that I can get that to add to my collection.
But there are people who are like that.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, that's probably what the majority of collectors are like. Right. But for me, in order for to mean something to me, it just has to come to me naturally.
Yeah. Do you collect anything else, or are you realizing maybe in this conversation right now, perhaps, that you might be collecting something and you don't really realize it yet?
Um, Other than collecting dust on things, no. No, there's nothing really else that I have that I really like to, collect. I mean, yeah, I can't really think of anything else.
And did we touch upon your favorite piece in your collection? Did we touch that
Yeah,
on?
the Sean Green batting glove.
Oh, right, the glove. What about cards? Any cards?
I mean, yeah, I mean, Nomar Garcia Parra was one of my favorite players growing up. So to have his rookie card, or Ichiro Suzuki was another one that it was just one of the, he won Rookie of the Year. So to have his rookie card as well, I believe Nomar won Rookie of the Year too. But yeah, I mean, all of these. What's cool is that all of these players, like, I grew up watching, and so when I look at Prince Fielder, or I look at Brian Giles or Carlos Beltran or Gary Sheffield. I mean, this is my youth. These are the players that I grew up watching.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's special to me, because, I remember seeing them, either seeing them on TV or seeing them in person and watching the games, and really connecting with them on how great they were, to be immortalized in a baseball card and to have their rookie card, to be able to say, like, I saw the entirety of this person's career, is just a really cool thing.
Yeah. Do you keep your ticket stubs? Like, are you that thorough?
Oh, that's actually, I'm glad you said something about that, because on the baseball trip, I did collect the ticket stubs, and we had them. They're not here now because my mom's done a little work in this in this room. But I used to have on the wall, like, all of the ticket stubs that I got from the baseball trips that I went to. And so we would frame it, we would have the tickets lined up, and then we'd have it with a little plaque saying what year it was from. And so that's cool to me, because I can look at a ticket stub and, like we talked about earlier, just be transported back to that ballpark. What did it smell like? What did it feel like? What happened? What were the stories that came from that game or that moment? That's something that I feel like it just kind of goes along with my collecting style, is that it all just happens naturally, and all of it is very nostalgic.
Fantastic. Have you been going to any games recently? Are they back? Are they on?
They are back. I've only been to one game so far, which was a Dodgers Angels game in Anaheim, but I've yet to go back to Dodger Stadium. But on June 15th, they are opening it back up to to full capacity, essentially. So that's cool.
I've lived in LA 20 years. I've never been to Dodger Stadium.
Well, that is a crime.
I got to go now.
You got to go. Go on a bobblehead night.
Oh, you got to let me know when that happens.
Oh yeah, they just announced a bunch of new bobbleheads that they're going to give out, which
is that the rage at the stadium for real? Like, it's bobblehead night?
That, I feel like that is the biggest draw. Like that, you're going to get a sold out crowd that night.
Yeah. Cool.
They used to give away mini bats, but then they were like, wait a minute, those could be used as weapons, so we're not going to give those out anymore.
Did I hear you talk about bats earlier? Do you have game played bats or cracked bats?
I have some that are game played or cracked. I went to the Louisville Slugger Museum a few years ago, and I got a custom bat with my name on it, so that was cool. But yeah, my mini bat collection is not that impressive, but I did used to collect those when they would give them away at the games.
Cool. Awesome. All right, Jake. Well, this has been really, really insightful for me. Baseball has always been kind of that thing that's I know is out there, and it's a big beast in terms of collecting.
Yeah.
And to talk with somebody who's not just solely based on cards, but is actually based with the experience and the tangible kind of one-offs that make the experience special. I mean, that's like the core of what collecting is all about. So thanks so much.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Yeah, this was fun. I've never talked about my collection before, so this was a new thing for me as well.
Oh, sweet. Okay, cool, man.